Welcome back, Mighty Vandals, to Tubbs at the Club, the Idaho Vandals affiliate on the Big Sky Podcast Network. I'm your host, Dallas Hammer, joined today by brave, bold Brian Marceau.
Good to be here, Dallas.
And also producer-seducer Martin Heemstra.
Good to be here, Dallas.
But you guys don't care about the three of us. We are joined by the man of the hour, the man of the year for the Idaho school. It is head football coach Jason Eck. Coach Eck, how you doing tonight?
Good. V's up, fellas. Good to be on with you guys.
Guys, we're just going to jump right into this. We don't have Coach Eck for too long, so we want to maximize every second we can. This is Around the Bar, brought to us by Hughes River Expedition. First thing for you, Coach. How would you grade year one at Idaho?
I thought it was a good year. I was very happy for our seniors that we were able to make the playoffs. I think still not happy really how it ended, because I think we had some close games we could have won and we got to get better. But, more than anything, I think it just gives us some feedback on what we need to do, how we got to get better here in the future and the steps we got to take as we build this thing going forward.
And in your mind, what are those steps for moving this program forward for year two and the future?
Well, I think we got to continue to be a more physical football team. I think that's going to be a big point of emphasis in spring practice, that we got to continue to be more physical, better at the line of scrimmage, better at stopping the run, better at running the ball. Continue just to be more consistent with, what we talk about being championship behavior, not beating ourselves, taking care of business off the field and on the field. So I think those are some of the big steps we'll be looking to make going forward.
So I want to stay a little bit more time on the season that just concluded last week. Was there any point throughout the season where it occurred to you that, hey, this Idaho football team, not only could Idaho make the playoffs, but at this point, we probably should make the playoffs?
Yeah, I think so. I think when we beat Montana, we put ourselves in a pretty good position, getting a quality win on the road against a playoff team. I think that certainly put us in position. And, this isn't something I talked to our staff about, our players about, but I kind of laid out the groundwork, of our path to make the playoffs, like before the season started. I said, hey, we gotta win one of these games where we're going to be big underdogs, the 2 Power 5 games, and then Montana and Sac State. And then, I didn't think I kind of questioned if we'd be good enough to run the table on the other ones. And I said, well, if we go 6-1 of those other 7, the teams who are more just like us, now that's our path to 7 wins. And we ended up doing that. It's a little frustrating because in the end, when you win the first, 6 or I guess 5 of those other games, we felt like we could have won that game against UC Davis. That's probably the game I'm most disappointed about, how we played all year, the UC Davis game at home. But, we executed that plan pretty well. And I think, I think the first game was big just for our player psyche and building confidence, seeing us compete well and be in that game against Washington State till the end, even though we didn't win the game. But then I think we really became true playoff contenders with that Montana win.
So how much, as far as like building the momentum you guys had, especially early in the season, like really rolling into Montana, beating Montana afterward, how much did being real competitive against the 2 Power 5 games seem to matter?
Well, you're saying against like Washington State and Indiana?
Yeah. The games that like on paper, and we saw Montana State get killed by Oregon State. Montana State's a great team. That it's pretty average for people to assume FCS teams lose those games. But look, you guys were in the WSU game until the last minute or last few seconds. You guys were beating Indiana at the end of the first half. I guess how much of a shot in the arm was that for you guys to really show you belonged against 2 damn good teams?
I think where we were coming from, it was a positive. Again, I hope to build the program where in the end, that's, in 5 years, I hope that's not a positive for Idaho. You know what I'm saying? To play one of those teams tough. But I think from where we were coming from, where last year you had 2 Power 5 games and lost them each by 42 points, I do think the guys saw that as progress. And, again, like I said, wins are what really help you, get through the tournament. So, like I said, I don't think really until we beat Montana on the road do we really become a contender that way. But I do think our players buy-in. I think we had good buy-in overall, but I think we probably had everybody buying in, at that point, because they started to see some tangible results that, what Coach is talking about is working.
You brought up the playoffs. Look, whether or not Idaho had made the playoffs, it still would have been a good season, finishing 7-4. But how much did it mean to both you, your fellow coaches, and then the players as well, to be selected for the playoffs and to be able to advance, and play that extra game, go on the road, be in the final 24?
I think it's a valuable experience because, playoff football is different, man. It's different than anything else. It's not, it's just unique. When you go to a bowl game or something, you go to the Potato Bowl. I mean, both teams go down there, hang out for a few days, have a great week. There really isn't a huge difference between if you win the game or lose the game. I mean, you put a banner up, but it doesn't change your experience that much. The playoffs, every game, your experience is totally different. If you win or lose, one team cries at the end of the game and one team celebrates their butts off. And the bowl games weren't bad. I'm sure. Well, it was a big win. I'm sure not many Colorado State guys were balling after they lost the game. They just went and got drunk in Boise. But it's different. So I think getting a taste of that, I think, is important for our guys going forward. And, we don't want to have that feeling again. We want to keep working to extend the season and end the season on good notes, which is tough to do in FCS football because really only one team does that.
Coach, you mentioned being most disappointed in the UC Davis loss. But from UC Davis, fringe playoff team, lost to SLU, obviously a playoff team making it into the second round. Sac State, a seeded team. What did you kind of learn about the team in those losses against maybe not teams that are better than Idaho currently, but the teams that are in Idaho's range or where Idaho wants to go?
Yeah, I think definitely Sac State and UC Davis were more physical than us. I think that surely showed up in that game. I really don't think Southeastern Louisiana was more physical than us, but I think that was a great game just showing what our recipe to win is, and we can't violate that. It's tough to win being -3 turnover margin, so that's not, and that's, I think our guys for most of the year did a great job with that. We got a little sloppier as the year went on, and I give them credit. They did a great job of creating some turnovers, and I think like the first fumble by Hatton really is great coaching. It's great technique by their players stripping the ball from behind. And Hayden, who's had a great year, he was a little loose to the football in that play. So, there's still lessons to have from that game. But to me, what I took away from Sac State and UC Davis is, hey, we got to be a lot more physical at the line of scrimmage. O-line, D-line, tight ends on both sides of the ball.
There were some position groups that maybe there was a little bit of concern with coming into the season. I know we'd spoken about it, the two of us, Brian and I, about the offensive line and just knowing that like you needed more depth in the trenches. But across the season, what groups did you see kind of grow and improve the most from game one to the final playoff game?
I think our receiving core definitely grew and showed a lot of, versatility and stuff. And, I don't know if anybody thought, we'd have 2,000-yard receivers. I think, looking at our running back room, a guy like Anthony Woods ended up rushing for 800 yards and being second team all big conference behind two great players. I think that definitely was, a big stride. We ended up, out of the 10 offensive linemen, we traveled, to the playoff game. 3 were true freshmen, so that's, I hope that we can get to the point down the road where a true freshman O-lineman could never play for us because we're so good up front, but we're not at that point yet. I thought they showed progress, and I think our defensive back showed some promise. A guy like Armani Arnold, now it's fortunate we only got to play him in 4 games, but when I look back in retrospect, I think maybe he should have been a guy who maybe we should have played the whole year. But blessing now that we got him redshirted. I think Mervyn Kenyon continued to play well throughout the year, and so I think we got a lot of growth throughout the year. But now we got to make really big steps in the offseason.
And then I have to bring this up. Thank you for dunking on me on Twitter after the Montana game. I learned my lesson. I will stop picking against you. How did you guys? I think obviously
who had
that
us
game
going to the playoffs this year. Your preseason predictions. Any of you guys have us going to the playoffs?
Oh, it's our producer in the background.
Producer Martin's got his hand up. Martin, jump on the screen. Take credit for this.
That's why he's the brains behind the operation.
Yep.
Good pick there, Martin.
Always sunshine.
So
he lives
the
right
Montana game.
He's got the inside intel.
Yeah, I will say I was a little thrown off. Martin picked University of Montana to go 0-12 this year. He's going to go for 0-13 this year too. But no, dude, you're right. Martin was a step ahead of us. We're going to give credit to him. So, Martin, take it away.
But that Montana game, obviously the onside kick was huge. How did you guys realize that you had the chance to do that? What went into making the decision that, hey, we're going to do this. We're going to try to catch them off guard?
Probably three factors. One, Logan Prescott is very good at that kick. He can execute that at a high level. So it was one, sometimes you see something that's there on film, and it was there on film. We saw that there are two guys, their center and guard would leave early. They'd start getting momentum going back. But sometimes if you can't execute the kick, even though it's there on film, you can't execute it. And then also just I think the game situation. I thought, playing a team like that on the road, I think we ended up being like 17-point underdogs. I thought we needed to steal a possession, in there somewhere. And, there were a couple other games. I thought we might have had it against Idaho State. I'll say that now because Regal's gone, so it won't be the same kickoff return scheme. But, we thought about doing it in that game, but just, the game situation was different. I felt we were a lot better than them. So, it, probably wasn't worth the risk and reward. I think that's more of a play you want to do as an underdog than as a favorite.
But you jumped into the next question I was going to ask anyway. What did you do to Charlie Regal to get him to run off after 1 year, man? He finishes that last game, then bails.
Well, I think he owes me a dinner and maybe some drinks after that too, after being 1-0 against him. But a lot of people ask you because it's one of those things. Until you become a head coach, one, you don't know how good you're going to be at it. Number two, you don't know how much you're going to like it. And a lot of people have asked me that, in the coaching circles, how are you liking being a head coach? And I'm enjoying it. I like it, but it's definitely different than being an assistant. And I think the thing that can make it easy for some guys is now the Power 5, pays so good that I think he's probably getting a big raise, to do that too. So he's got probably more money and less headaches. So good for Charlie. I hope they get somebody good there at Idaho State. I'd like to see everybody in our conference be competitive and win non-conference games just because that'll keep making the strength of schedule within the conference better. So I hope they can, get things going in the right direction. That's tough for the assistant coach. It's tough for the players when a head coach leaves after a year.
Well, the good news for ISU is Ed McCaffrey's available. So there's always that. But related to you specifically, you brought it up. So, your first year as head coach, any sort of surprises at all or any things that as a coordinator, maybe it didn't occur to you that this is going to be a much bigger deal as a head coach?
More time spent with media commitments, and that kind of, changed from week to week. But like a week like you're playing in Montana where the visiting team has a ton of media, you end up spending quite a bit of time that week talking to people and things. More just booster interactions. And, I think I knew both those things were going to increase, but I think the first time you go through it, it's the first time you're seeing it, and just a lot of other stuff that comes across your plate that doesn't come across your plate as an assistant coach that, probably takes away from the, you're not going to spend 15 hours of watching, the tape of, the team's defense, like maybe you did when you're an assistant coach. So it's just different. It's you got to adapt, and you got to, try to think how you're using the time the best. And, for me, and I said this all along, just, I wanted to have great assistants that I entrusted to do their jobs. And so I didn't need to micromanage them, and I could, be the head coach and really try to make sure that I was dealing a lot with just the spirit of the team and making sure the vibe of the team was good. And, I think that's worked out pretty well so far.
So last question about the 2022 season, which we had. This is about the playoffs again. And I don't know if you have an answer. We've just had a lot of people ask on our Patreon Discord. A lot of these 61 live viewers have messaged us in asking about this. Do you have any idea why Idaho's bid was not accepted to host over Southeastern Louisiana's?
I don't know the exact reason. I do think, I think our bid did include like hotels in Spokane for the visiting team, which is pretty far away. And that's, I think, going to be an issue, whenever the Apple Cup's in Washington State, I think that's going to be an issue. So we better, anytime there's an even year, we better get a bye. and play this weekend coming up there. But I don't know the exact reason. I don't think they give you the exact reason of how you do it. I think we were competitive. You look at North Dakota. I mean, North Dakota way outbid Weber State, and so I think the NCAA kind of does what they want and then just justify it later, figure out what their reason is later why they did it.
So last question. I lied. This is the last question. How would you feel if the NCAA shifted from seeding 8 to just seeding 24? So the whole matchups are a little more clear.
I would even be happy if they just seeded 16. And then once you figured out the top 16, then try to make the last 8 teams fit regionally. I think that would be a great improvement and probably something they'd be a little bit more agreeable to than seeding all the way down. So, but I think that would be a great move. And, it's, because I think, I do think Weber, part of the reason they got that is I think they were viewed kind of as the 9 seed, the first team to miss a seed, and they didn't want to send a team who just missed the seed on the road, which, really I think is right. But, North Dakota probably wasn't. Maybe they were in the last 8. I don't know. Maybe we were in the last 8. I think, one of the keys to the playoffs, I think, is getting a bye, because even like last year when we went to the semifinals without a bye, by that 4th game, it's tough. It's tough to play 4 games in a row against really good teams.
More from Coach Eck in just a second. If you are looking for a great all-inclusive week-long vacation, do not look past your backyard. Hughes River Expeditions has been Vandal owned and operated since 1976, and they're ready to take you on the vacation of a lifetime. Enjoy a multi-day trip down the Middle Fork of the Salmon, the main Salmon River of No Return, the Salmon River Canyons, or the Selway. You can even check out special trips like one to see the Perseid meteor shower. Camp on pristine beaches, run amazing whitewater, hike scenic trails, spot wildlife, soak in beautiful natural hot springs, and fish some of the most remote stretches of river in the entire country. Just bring your clothes, let HRE handle the rest. Grab a paddle, catch dinner, and ride the bull all throughout the Gem State. Call now at 800-262-1882 or check them out at hughesriver.com. Coach, earlier this week, you were on a noted friend of Tubbs at the Club, Johnny Ballgame's radio show. You alluded to replacing Division II Western Oregon with a game that matters for the playoffs next year and how important that is to get that on the schedule. Is that a realistic possibility? And what goes into like this last minute scheduling of trying to adjust this month? Just, I mean, it's a year away or 9 months away, but what goes into that?
Well, I credit to our administration that, I think our administration has done a really good job of trying to, listen to the things that I've said. Hey, I think this is really important. And I've tried to be realistic and not say everything is really important, even though a lot of it's pretty important. But, I have said, hey, it's really important that you kind of give yourself a chance, that you don't have to go 7-1 in the league to make the playoffs. Because ours is a tough league to go 7-1. And, I think if we can get another FCS game, which I think there is a real realistic opportunity. I can't, confirm it's a done deal yet. I think there's still some details, but I think there's something in the works. And I really appreciate, Terry Gottlick and Tim Mooney for, exploring these options. I think that gives us a lot better path to keep this momentum going and be a playoff team again next year.
Coach, we're going to focus on some more questions for the future because that's what most of our patrons and YouTube commenters have asked for. Giovanni McCoy obviously had one of the best seasons in Vandal history. Finals for the Jerry Rice Award. I hope he wins the thing. Does he have the 2023 job locked up, or does he have to re-win the job in spring and fall? How do you approach that moving forward when you have a freshman that had such an incredible season like he did?
He's our quarterback, and he played at a championship level, and that's, when I look at starting spots, it's not necessarily just because you started last year, you have the starting spot wrapped up. But if you started and played what I view as a championship level, the way you played, we could win the Big Sky Conference with you playing that way. You're going to be our starter, and he's going to be our starter right now. And we got to keep him healthy and things like that. I think that's always going to be a little bit of a concern with Bonnie. And that's my message to him. I want to try to have him put on 10 pounds of muscle this offseason to give himself a little more body armor. We saw this year with him missing one game, getting nicked up. And that's why we got to have great reserves there. I was very happy with how Jack played in his one opportunity to play. But no, Bonnie's our starter going forward, and we have a lot of belief we can win a lot of games with him as our quarterback.
The coaching staff, obviously, I'm sure you're thrilled with all your guys, but how do you try to retain them? Obviously, you want them to succeed elsewhere and get promotions and move on and get bigger and better things, but how do you go about trying to retain as much of what you have while also letting guys, take new, bigger opportunities?
Yeah, I think my message to the guys is one, I want to make sure they, are feeling appreciated and that it's good working conditions, that they enjoy coming to work every day and are having fun, working here. I think that's a part of retention because, I just know from my past history, usually if you're working a job and you're miserable, that's when you're most likely to look. Number two, I think I want to keep showing opportunities how, we're going to continue to try to develop those guys. Me, just like our coaches, our position coaches need to try to have our players improve this off season on the fundamentals of their position. I got to keep helping our staff, keep improving on their fundamentals of coaching, to continue to get their players better and professional development, whether it's, going to the National Coaches Convention or going to visit with other staffs that can improve that. I think that's something that we can do. I was texting with the NFL GM, recently, and, he was saying a great first season they can have you help with. And I said right away, I'd love to get one of my coaches one of those minority internships, next summer to help him keep developing. And then, I would love to keep trying to, I think we have the best staff in FCS football. I'd love to keep trying to get them paid like the best staff in FCS football. And, that's, where a lot of our fans and boosters and donations come in. But, I think I'm realistic, about where we are in the place. My hope is that if guys are leaving here, it's to slam dunk jobs. Again, I don't want them taking the, first bus to a crappy MAC program or New Mexico State. No offense to Akron and New Mexico State, but, I'd rather have where guys are building something here for a while and then they're, moving to a Power 5 job, from here. And, I said that in our staff meeting the other day. I think it helped me in my career where I turned down some Group of 5 jobs when I was when I was at South Dakota State that led me to getting this job, which was a no-brainer. I mean, no one told me, yeah, you should, turn down a head job at Idaho to stay as the coordinator at South Dakota State. And that's those are the kind of the jobs I hope our guys are leaving for, like where anybody in their right mind would say, yeah, you should go do that. That's too good of an opportunity to pass up. And that's, that's my hope, but I'm realistic, and this is going to be my first season going through it. First off season, and even last year I lost a coach, and with Tripodi, who we hired and went to Wyoming. But just talking to one of our players today in an exit interview, I think me and him both agreed. Really, I think it worked out for the best. I think Cody Booth came in and did a better job, and I think that's one of my jobs as a head coach is when we do lose a good assistant coach, find someone even better, to come in and replace him. And I think us having a good year probably shows, more attractiveness on the coaching market as well. That hey, no, they're gonna be good at Idaho, and this is the place I can go to help my career.
So there's a question from one of our patrons, Taylor Cash, paraphrased. So in your mind, what are the next steps for Idaho to go from being, look, Idaho made the playoffs, but probably weren't in the discussion for a bye. What has to happen at Idaho to get to that step where season ends and it's pretty well understood if Idaho should probably be a top 8 team?
Well, I think, winning more games. I mean, probably getting to where you're at, 7-1 or 8-0. Obviously, this year showed that if you're 8-0 in the Big Sky, you're definitely going to get a seed. And again, I think football wise on the field, we got to keep getting better at the line of scrimmage. Keep just executing at a higher level. I still think there were some things like you watch, being in the right gap on defense, executing blitzes properly with everybody working in cohesion is stuff we can get better at. Being better running the ball. Again, you look at most of the teams who are playing this week, who I think are true contenders. A lot of them are rushing the ball, 6 yards per carry. I'm not sure exactly where we were, like 4.7 or something. And then, I think there's some things we had to continue to build infrastructure wise. And I think our administration has been great because they're looking at those things and asking, what are the next steps we got to take? And, I think improving our locker room is important. Improving our meeting room situation is important. I think probably the longest term one of the three is, getting, some time of some kind of turf facility where our players have access to like throw the ball around and run 7-on-7 in January, February, and March when when the turf is set up for track. And again, I don't think that needs to be like 100-yard surface, but maybe a 50-yard surface where you could have full 7-on-7 drills and things like that. And that would also help with some of your just off-season agility training and change of direction things. So those are some of the things like infrastructure-wise, like to be a consistent national champion at this level. I just look like what South Dakota State did. They built a beautiful indoor facility in 2014 and then built a brand new stadium in 2016. And now they've been in the semifinals for the last 5 years and their favorite as the one seed to do it again this year. So I do think in college athletics, you can see a lot of return on the investment when you invest in things.
So you talked about improving running the football, talked about the teams playing still in the playoffs right now. I mean, that's a recent, not exactly recent, but kind of a big evolution in the Big Sky. Is the better teams the Big Sky right now? Honestly, they're not, passing the ball 50 times. It's, look at Montana State. They run you to death. Look at Weber State. They're tough. They run a ton. Look at Sac State. Yeah, they can pass, but they can run pretty damn well. Look at UC Davis, same thing. Is there anything in your mind that you'd say explains why that's been the evolution of this conference over the last few years? Because it really wasn't that long ago that teams like Eastern and NAU and even, Sac State was in there, were winning games throwing the ball, but it looks like every good team looks like they're trying to follow the same template.
Well, I'll give credit to North Dakota State, because I know a lot of the stuff we did at South Dakota State was copying what they did because it was the best recipe. And, lately South Dakota State's just been doing that recipe better than North Dakota State, but it's play really good defense, be really good at the line of scrimmage, run the ball, don't beat yourself, make the other team beat you. And, I think that's been North Dakota State's recipe. Even the thing that's kind of crazy is even when they've had, they've had 3 quarterbacks drafted in the NFL, 2 of them in the first round during that stretch, but they throw it about 22 times. They don't, they're not dropping back with those guys 40 times, man. They do their recipe. They're going to run the ball, then play action and try to wear you out. So I would really attribute it to that. It's there's been some teams that have, Eastern made a run there in the championship game, being a little bit more of a throw it around team. But, even if you look at James Madison, the year that they beat, the only time North Dakota State's lost at home during that stretch, they kind of did the same recipe. They were really physical on defense and ran the ball. And, I just think that's been winning football in the FCS playoffs. And especially just, I think a physical run game, it's tough to have a bad day with your physical run game. You can get games in the playoffs where weather can really have a factor with wind or rain or snow, but it doesn't affect your run game as much.
This is a compilation question from patrons Jonathan Jacobs and Nick Weber. Attendance clearly went up from 21 to 2022. It clearly went up from the Drake game till the end of the season, especially that Eastern game. I'm asking you to tell fans what to do here, because athletic department, your coaching staff's doing a ton of outreach, which, by the way, thank you. Everyone I talk to loves that. What would you tell fans who are going to the games right now to do to try to get that dome closer to, I think Idaho averaged about 8,500, 8,600 this season, right in that ballpark. What would you tell the fans who are already tuned in to do to try to get that number closer to 12 for next year?
Well, I think just continuing to kind of spread the gospel, telling people, man, what a great time we have when we go to these Idaho games, and telling them about the whole experience of, getting there and tailgating. I think especially people who are in the, within a couple hour radius are huge, having Spokane and Coeur d'Alene and Lewiston people do that, because I'm very cognizant of the cost of hotels in town on home game days, which I know can be tough for someone who's got to drive from Seattle or Boise and is going to have to stay overnight. And, I know this, I probably could afford it now, but probably none of my assistants could afford those hotel rates for, a weekend. So I'm hesitant to think we're going to build it by all these people driving up from 5 hours away to do it. But, I think people do love a winner and rallying around that. And I think just understanding the whole value you're getting of seeing a fun brand of football that's exciting, good energy in the dome, and just the full experience, having a great time in the parking lot before and tailgating. Hopefully it can be a lot of people who they bring a friend or two along to every home game, and then those friends have such a good time that they want to come back on their own the next chance they get.
Jason, we're going to pivot to dumb questions because we are just about at the end of our time with you. So first dumb question for you. Congratulations, by the way. I know that your home is I believe, just finished being built. Your family's moved back into Moscow. Great time for you.
Wait, December 9th.
December 9th. Okay.
We got moved back, so December 9th.
Right there, then.
Put a little pressure on with the Patreons.
So, I like that. Speaking of the Patreons, I do apologize to anybody listening to this. I forgot to give you credit for your questions. I will do better about that moving forward. This question comes from Sean Kramer, the founder of Tubs at the Club. What are you going to have in your man cave in the new house?
I'm going to have a good little setup now in this basement now. We got a little, like any good Midwesterner, we have a little bar area over to one side. We'll have like a little TV above the bar. Then we'll have kind of the, my wife picks out all the furniture, but like a nice little, what do you call those big couches that kind of wrap around?
Sectionals?
I forget what you call it. Sectional, a big sectional that kind of like wraps around that's in front of the main TV. And then we're going to have like a little kids area on the other side of the basement where they'll be able to set up their video games and have another little TV so that we don't run into that problem like I've had in the past of like the kids want to play Madden football and I'm trying to watch the late night Pac-12 game or something. And so it's going to be a good little setup down there for, entertaining, whether it's boosters, coaching staff, recruits when they come in. It's going to be a nice little basement there.
So this one comes from a couple of our patrons. I will not name them because you may or may not know the daughter that might be asking this question. I know you can't speak a whole lot about recruits, but there is a recruit that comes from Brookings, South Dakota that we are all expecting to make the team. The daughter is about the same age as this potential recruit, and she would like to know the eligibility of said recruit. Maybe not eligibility on the field. She may.
That's a good question.
The daughter may work at the Dome.
I may have to bring in my wife to answer that one. She runs a pretty tight ship, but I know. My son right now is in Brookings because he's finishing up school there this semester and living with a friend. But he's still a good kid. He checks in with mom, and he asked the other day if he could go hang out with this new girl and go to her house as one of the cheerleaders. And so my wife was all abuzz with that and texting me about that Jax is going there. So I don't know, right? He doesn't have a girlfriend right now, but he's going to hang out with a cheerleader at her house. So
you've now been in Moscow, and by the way, I think we have that's a great eligibility answer. It's definitely maybe. So you've been in Moscow for, we're not quite a year, but it's been more than a couple months. Do you have your go-to places, restaurant or bars that you have a long day and you want to have the night mellow you out a little bit? Do you have go-to places yet?
Well, of course, I got to go always see my guy Mark over at the Corner Club, the namesake of your fine show. I stopped through there quite a bit to, when my wife wasn't here and I had no one to go home to, I might stop there for a nightcap on the way home from work or after my radio show. So that's definitely a go-to.
What do you have a list of top Christmas or let's just call them holiday themed movies?
Yeah, at our house we watch because my wife loves Christmas. She half of our moving expenses when the truck gets here are tubs that have Christmas stuff in them. So we like to watch that Elf movie with the funny guy from Saturday Night Live. He was a USC fan. I forget his name.
Will Ferrell.
So we like to watch that one. We like to watch Chevy Chase Christmas Vacation. That's a favorite. We like to watch Home Alone 2. Those are favorites around the house. So those are probably our top ones that we'd watch around Christmas time at the Eck household.
Can you give us?
I got like little kids, so we can't watch like Die Hard.
Can you give us any details on what your Spotify Wrapped list looked like?
What's the Wrapped list? Like stuff you shop Christmas presents to?
I had a theory that this might happen. No, so Spotify Wrapped, it's Spotify, it's a streaming app. Essentially put together a list of like your top 10 most listened to songs and artists. You don't need to give us 10. Please don't give us 10.
I try to keep up with what the players do. So sometimes we'll listen, we listen to a lot of music at practice, and then if I like the song, I'll say, hey, who sings that? And then I'll put it on there to listen to them to keep it young. So, the guys had me listening to a little G-Eazy this year. That was a pretty good one. I like some more old school stuff. If I'm going to like sing, I saw Jason Bird on the road recruiting last year, former Vandal running back when I was an assistant coach here, and his sister like runs karaoke at a bar. And so, I wanted to sing, if I was going to sing karaoke, I went with a little like Bon Jovi old school, like Living on a Prayer. I like that stuff too. So I'm not a huge music guy though. Sometimes I listen to Colin Cowherd podcasts and things.
Last dumb question. Did you have any specific game this week where the morning after was, let's say, a little bit harder than usual to get up for?
You know what? I think anytime your season comes to an end, it's just a little depressing when you think of, especially you lose a game by 3 points. You just think of all the, one play here, one play there that was different, and we're practicing this week. So, I think all week I've got days where, you wake up and you just think, yeah, we're not going to practice today. And we were. And, I've been thinking that just as I meet with our players with exit interviews this week, so I've been talking about how, we gotta be a little better. You got to get a bye because, think about that. I mean, how nice would it be to get a Southeast Louisiana or Sanford to fly up into Moscow, even though we're going to play inside, just have them look around at all the snow and have their bus get stuck in a ditch, coming down from Spokane or something. I think that's a great home field advantage. So.
All right, guys, we're just about at the end of our time with Coach Eck. Coach, you might remember this from the first time you were on Tubs at the Club. This is the reversal where we're going to give you the chance to ask Brian, Martin, and I any question you want. Before we do that, I do have to show off this fantastic metal work from Nick Davis. Again, guys, if you're looking at this and thinking, holy shit, that is cool, contact us. Contact Nick Davis. He's at Idaho_Davis on Twitter. Make some of the coolest stuff possible. Obviously, all the licensed Vandal stuff you can buy in the Vandal store. He also makes a sweet King Spud artwork. Brian, you can see it on his screen there. We even gave our King Spud the Coach Eck visor just to give it a little bit of that extra personality there. So
we took notes on the fashion and we had to incorporate.
Absolutely. So Nick Davis does awesome work. Reach out to us. Reach out to him at Idaho_Davis. Coach Jason Eck, any questions for the Tubs at the Club gang?
Well, I asked you last time, what your favorite all-time Dome memory. What is your guys' favorite memories? I want all three. I even want Martin's. What are the favorite memory of this year, of the 2022 year?
That's easy for me. I traveled to the Montana game. My 1-year-old daughter made it through the entire game. Had to have her walk around the concourse a little bit, but that game was so damn fun. I lost my voice at the end when Roshan punched in that last touchdown. You guys went up by 14 and the game was essentially over. I absolutely thrashed my throat screaming game over to all the Montana fans around me. So no, dude, that game was so damn fun. Look, I mean, all the games were fun this year to me. Like, that was one of the huge changes, is going to the Dome's a celebration now. And that it was like that every single game I was there. But I missed the Drake game because of a funeral. So I had to be gone. There was no prayer. My family could do nothing otherwise. I was not missing a single other drivable Idaho game. It was just done. I told people like my grandma, like, no, I don't care if you're moving stuff on Saturday. I'm not going to be there. But that really turned the Montana game was when everything sunk in, man. And it was clear that, no, dudes, they're not just good in the future. They're not getting better. They're good right now.
I'm going to go with a weird one. The loss to Washington State was actually my favorite part of the year, because for me, that was the game that I realized this is a different team than what we've seen. I have not seen a whole lot of good Idaho football in my life. I was too young to appreciate any of the FCS playoffs before they moved up, and then obviously 3 winning seasons in 25 some years in the FBS. So watching you guys take a lead against Wazoo on the road in a hostile environment. I know it's on the road, it's 7 miles down the road, but seeing that was like the moment for me, like, oh, this team is it. This is it. This season is going to be special. And then obviously it ended up, this is going to be a season I remember for the rest of my life.
For me, it was Eastern just after last year's, after the game of where it was the debacle, the game that I would like to forget. And also just, I had a friend of mine who was a coworker that I work with that's a big Eastern fan. He's buddies with Aaron Best and also somehow knows Cooper Kupp as well. Just to have him just to be in the game, just him being so what I was last year is nice to see for once.
Was there any thought in the Eastern game to trying to push, break at least 50? Did that cross you guys' mind at all? Because I know when I was up there at halftime, everyone talked to us, said, okay, we got to do 50. Look, they have this coming.
No, part of it, at the end of the game, you want to be smart and get your starters out and get our twos in. If our twos had put together a better drive and score. What was the game where Andre had a long run at the end of one of the games? That might have been Portland State or something. But, if your twos do that, but you got to be smart because I don't think you could live with yourself trying to score 50 on somebody and you get Hayden Hatton hurt at the end of a game when the game is really in doubt already.
All right, Coach Eck, thank you so much for being so generous with your time. Always a pleasure to have you on. You're a recurring guest now, so I think that means really anytime we want you on, you just kind of have to come on. I think that's how that goes. I'm pretty sure, at least. I think that's in the contract. Anyways, Coach Eck, thank you so much.
Once or twice a year, I got you. Once or twice a year, I got you.
Perfect. Well, you know what? That's a great compromise. We'll take it. Awesome. Thank you so much, Coach.
He's up. Thanks, fellas.
All right, guys. That was the second time Coach Eck has appeared on Tubs at the Club. Quick shout out to everybody jumping in the comment section. We have more live viewers than we've ever had. I like to think it's because Brian, Martin, and I have been doing such a great job recently, but we all know you guys came here for Coach Eck. Immediate reactions, Brian, Martin?
Just look, whenever
I want it to be the new season already. I'm sorry to jump in front of you, Brian. Holy shit. I am already excited for next year and December 21st for signing day.
Well, look, Martin, we'll bring you back in. Everyone knows Martin was holding back the F-bombs and playing the Jesus Christ clip the entire time while Eck was on. Not that the dude hasn't heard those words before or can't handle it, but I don't know. Just trying to make sure we don't face plants needlessly. But look, here's my takeaway, man. Because Jason Eck is a pretty fun interview. We have some concrete stuff. If you guys were curious about the quarterback situation for next year, Jason Eck was clear. Giovanni's the guy. Makes it sound like the battle then would be for the number 2. If you're curious about how does he kind of delineate who's going to, if you started last year, who maintains their spot, he said, look, if you're playing at, championship level, meaning hey, if you're starting and you're good, you probably don't have to start from scratch. But if that's not you, then hey, maybe you are starting from scratch. It's a reasonable answer of some people are obviously entrenched. Some people are not. And hey, he said Giovanni was entrenched. People asked about FCS getting rid of that D2 game and getting an FCS game in there. Yeah, he said the department's working on it. That's a real thing. He's now said that twice. Which means they are not afraid of letting fans know that's a goal for next season because the team is trying to get Jesus Christ, Jason Meyer, because he wants team to get the playoffs next year. That's a real thing. So I guess, one of my takeaways is we got some concrete stuff, man. And all the concrete stuff that he brought up, Dallas, it's the kind of stuff I'm glad to hear. I'm glad he's not afraid of sharing that with fans.
Absolutely. I do have to give a quick shout out because anybody listening to this in the audio is going to have no idea why you just brought up Jason Mayer. Jason Mayer asking a follow-up question in the YouTube comments. Follow-up question: is the cheerleader just a friend or a friend? You might be able to piece 2 and 2 together based on Jason asking that question. Guys, I cannot believe we have to go talk about basketball soon.
We don't have to, because we could still talk about this interview right now if you really wanted to.
But see, it's it's the darkness at the end of the light is all I can think about at this moment, because that you get off of a 45-minute talk with Coach Eck and all you can think about is wanting to run through a wall for Vandal football next year. And that's all I can think about is Vandal football. Sure?
Because all I can hear is Jason Eck, thank you for coming on. You guys, we got to talk about Zach Kloss. We just have to. This is like the 19th time this has happened. Nick Weber in the comment thread. Yeah. Dallas, you got to listen to your superiors. Nick Weber, no veggies after that.
See, I'm going to blame Martin for this one, because Martin is posting things about Portland State basketball in the men's basketball chat, which makes me think of anybody that doesn't know what chat I'm talking about. Patreon.com/Tubs of the Club. You can get into our Discord. You can talk about every sport imaginable. You can talk all sorts of stuff. Vandal athletics, Vandal non-athletics, non-Vandal stuff. We've got it all. Come hang out with us.
We have 60 people that want to talk about the Pacific win.
Exactly.
See, you know what? Hey, let's just do a hard shift real quick. I'm looking in the comment thread to just try and talk about football again. Here's Sean Kramer. Sean, thanks for the assist here. We really need it. Sean Kramer says he spoke like he plans on being here a long time. So obviously we're not going to ask a coach, hey, when are you leaving? Because there is no good answer for that whatsoever. We don't want to waste people's time. But I want to get back to the fun stuff, that more specifics. Eck talked about, we asked him about keeping assistants around. He talked about, hey, money matters, of course, and doing what we can financially. Hey, that obviously means if you want to contribute in that way, it's donating to the VSF to supplement contracts for coaches. But I want to jump further. He talked about getting coaches minority coach internship through the NFL as an example of trying to incentivize staying in Idaho. I know Stanley Franks took part in, I don't know if the former term is internship, but the Big Sky Conference heading into Media Day, they had, it's not exactly a workshop. It's broadly speaking kind of like a training thing for guys who are not head coaches who want to maybe someday become head coaches. Stanley Franks took part in that for University of Idaho. So look, more concrete stuff, and all the concrete stuff that we get to hear about Dallas, it's things moving in the right direction, the kind of things that you're damn happy to hear, that when Jason Eck talks to a pro head coach and a pro coach, and the pro coach says, hey, what can we do to help out? Jason Eck not only has something, it's something for a guy who's not Jason Eck.
Yeah. I got nothing to add to that, Brian. I'm honestly still like riding the wave of just trying to be as realistic as I can. Coach Eck feels like a guy who could end up at a big time program at some point in the future. You got to be very happy he's here. We have more live viewers right now than we've ever had. I'm assuming most of you guys went to Games in the Dome. This is going to be probably the biggest episode Tubs of the Club has ever had. If you have any interest at all in Vandal football, you need to get here next year. Next year's schedule, not maybe lining up quite as easy as this one did, but this program's headed in the right direction. And Brian, I'm sorry for killing every single point you just fed to me there, but that's right now. That's all I can think about is, guys, we gotta come out and support this team. Like, support the school, support this team, pack the dome. Like, this is a good time to be a Vandal. We haven't had a whole lot of those. Bathe in it, because who knows the next time something like this comes around.
Correct, but also hey, I know you're talking about, hey, you don't know the next time this comes around, and I know a little bit of that is, I'm now talking not to you, Dallas, but about you, is the Vandal PTSD that everyone has from Idaho having, last few times Idaho's had a good season. It was, Rob Akey 1 year makes a bowl, faceplant next few years. Paul Petrino makes a bowl, faceplant next few years. Guys, I have 0% concern about that, because we saw the huge change in Eck and his staff coming on. We started seeing buy-in in the community in a way that we hadn't seen. We started seeing, come on, Idaho being a second half team. And that's not to say Idaho struggled in the first half, but Idaho became reputationally a second half team, meaning they can adjust to what other teams are doing on the fly. It's because not only is Jason Eck great at what he does, he has great coordinators, guys like Rob Borisch, guys like Luke Schleisner, guys like Tom Ford, guys in leadership positions doing exactly what they need to do. So I have zero PTSD right now. I'm stoked for next season. You touched on the schedule. I want to hold off on like running just on my end. I want to hold off on running through next year's schedule for a while because I want to still enjoy where we have this season. We still have our own tubs like closing the book on this season episode next week as well. But just because you brought it up, that stuff's always on paper. Some teams get better that it's surprising they get better, like Idaho. Heading into this season, even us, Dallas, we knew Idaho was going to be a tougher win, but we didn't think Idaho was going to be a top 15 matchup for Big Sky teams. We didn't know that Idaho being on Eastern schedule was going to be the nail in the coffin that there's no prayer of 500 in conference. Those things do change, year to year a little bit. And Idaho's moving in the right direction. Idaho made a huge jump, and Eck talked about it. Idaho's got it, and he talked the same way we talked about Idaho after the UC Davis and Sac State games. Is Idaho's got to get more physical. Idaho's got to get stronger in the trenches. And in other interviews, Jason Eck's been open. It takes time to develop Big Sky linemen that are going to be that good. Big Sky schools, North Dakota State, they're not getting 5-star linemen. They get guys, they have a kick-ass strength and conditioning program, and they develop all conference linemen over a few years. Well, Eck's been here for 1 year, but we know the broad direction the team's moving. We know who some of the guys coming back for next season we can point to say, hey, we know we've got all conference talent on this team. I'm not talking like third team. I'm not talking about Dylan McCaffrey bullshit honorable mention, all Big Sky talent. I'm talking about guys who, if they should be first team, worst case scenario, they're second team. So it's just hard for me to stress how stoked I am on this, man. I brought it up to Jason Eck. The football games this year were celebrations. We had attendance went up. Virtually everyone you talked to was stoked about how the year was going. And just because this brings up when people talk about fan bases, Idaho fans made it clear shit doesn't have to be perfect for fans to be on board. We just need more excitement into next year too. And look, the jury's in right now. Attendance certainly went up. I thought the games were more fun as more people were there. And it's just going to take more than 1 year to completely turn that around. Look at Sacramento State as your reference point. It took a couple of years for Sacramento State to really turn their attendance around. But this year, Sacramento State was one of the top, I think they're the number 3 team in the Big Sky in attendance. They had the single most attended Big Sky game this season against UC Davis. Just takes time, Dallas. You're laughing. I'm going to throw it to you.
You're muted.
You're muted, man.
Look at that. I tried using the StreamYard mute instead of my microphone mute, and I completely screwed the pooch. I pulled a Brian on that one. Brian, look at the bottom of the screen. That's why I'm laughing.
For the love of God, Martin. Okay, if you're listening on podcast, we have Dread It, Run From It, Veggie Season still arrives. Yeah, no, dude, we will eventually get to basketball, but I'm still going to stay in football till we're talking about basketball. So Dallas, any further reaction on Idaho football after this interview in this season?
Man, I'm so stoked for this team. I'm so stoked of what this team did and what the future looks like for this team. I mean, you have a guy like Giovanni McCoy come in as Eck even said it, that they thought McCoy was really small, thought his grades were pretty bad, didn't really have high expectations for him. Kid climbs all the way up the depth chart, gets to first, ends up being a third team all Big Sky player. And I'm still devastated. I think if McCoy's 100% healthy against SLU, I think they win that game by 3 touchdowns. And it sucks that he did get hurt. And I think Eck obviously mentioned McCoy's got to put a little more weight on, get a little bit bigger. The things he said about, hey, we had freshmen playing. We had, Aiden Knapik, I'm sorry, I don't know how to pronounce your last name. I'm terrible with that. Made it as an honorable mention freshman walk-on lineman. And then Eck says right out, I do not want freshmen playing on the line. Like, that's the goal, is to build this team to where that isn't something that happens. Obviously they succeeded, but it's clear to me that Eck's got a vision for this program. This was just the first step in the right direction. Man, I would be content with seasons like this from here on out, but it sounds like that's obviously not the goal. The goal is championships. The goal is winning the Big Sky Conference. I'm fucking excited, man.
We do have one thing we have not yet done that may still be appropriate for this season. We have not picked the 3 Big Sky games. with no prep whatsoever, Dallas, do you still want to do that? Look, I'm now going to, again, Dallas, I'm talking about you, but not to you. Guys, I'm really just trying to throw any lifeline to keep the topic still on football.
No, I'm good for it. I'll bring them up right now. I know we don't have them written down. I'll bring them up and put them on the screen here. Or Martin might if he beats me to it. But no, I'm all for it. Let's talk a little bit more football, because anything we can do to keep away from the dreaded thing I don't want to talk about. So, first one up. Let's rip the Band-Aid off, guys. North Dakota State, the number 3 overall seed, hosting Montana.
I will go North Dakota State by 50.
I'm not going to go North Dakota State by 50, but NDSU is definitely going to win. Look, Montana had the weirdest first-round game. They were down 24-3 to SEMO. I'm not kidding. I was honestly curious, and I have spent time online and on this show telling people, look, even though Montana lost some games, like if you think Bobby Hauck's a bad coach, it's because you have no idea what you're talking about. I was truly curious, like, oh, if Montana loses this game 35-3, is Bobby Hauck fired tomorrow? Then Montana turns the game, honestly, into a not quite blowout, but a multi-score win. Partially, that was special team scores. I can't believe SEMO decided to let Malik Flowers return a kickoff and Junior Bergen return a punt, but that's where you go. North Dakota State is not going to make those mistakes. North Dakota State is too tough, even in a quote-unquote down year for NDSU. They're the number 3 seed, so yeah. Montana can't score well enough, and I think their defense is a little beat up, and their offense can't keep the defense off the field long enough. So, yeah, NDSU wins easy.
That takes us to our next game. Richmond Spiders at Sacramento State Hornets.
Are you not picking the Montana game, Dallas?
Oh, sorry. I don't know why I didn't. North Dakota State wins this game by 30. North Dakota State is going to out-physical the shit out of Montana. Montana's defense might be able to keep North Dakota State's offense at bay for a while, but I don't think Montana's got what they need offensively to make a dent in this North Dakota State defense. I don't think this game's going to be particularly close. So, my apologies. You know what? Let's commit to the amateur hour bit here, guys. I'm finally going to read off some of the comments here because I've been doing a shit job of that the last 3 weeks. Tom Kendall, North Dakota State by 51. Colin Hughes, 31-17, North Dakota State. Captain, NDSU by 50. Taylor Cash, NDSU in a nail biter. Tom Kendall, 34-14 for Montana State. Weber. Sorry, I didn't. Guys are throwing me off here, throwing in other games that we haven't talked about yet. But again, I jumped the gun on games too. Guys, let's do it. Richmond Spiders, Sac State Hornets. Richmond coming off of a 41-0 win in the first round against the Pioneer League Davidson Wildcats.
I think Sacramento State wins this one by 14.
What this game made me wish for is that Idaho could get that Pioneer League playoff matchup in the first round, which Idaho was only going to get that right now if San Diego wins the Pioneer League. So I think this is going to be close. Richmond's out of the CAA. That's out of it. That's almost universally understood as the third best FCS conference. I think it's like I expect this is going to be relatively close, but looking through strength of schedule, looking through some margins of Richmond wins, I think Sac State gets the monkey off their back. I think Sac State gets their first playoff win. They've had byes this was third consecutive year. In a normal year, Sac State's made the playoffs, made it with a bye. But I think because Sac State, they've been pretty damn good at running the ball. Jake Dunaway looks good when he's not playing Idaho, or he at least looks solid when he's not playing Idaho. So I expect Sac State's going to get that first playoff win. I also think this really means something to Sacramento State. Playoff games mean something to every team, but I think it really means something to Sacramento State to get that first round win after losing in their opening game last 2 years.
Yeah, I don't see Richmond. They're obviously a considerable step up in quality from Davidson, so it's tough to gauge a whole lot from that game. Again, Idaho to beat Davidson by probably close to the same score. It's tough to gauge a whole lot there because it's just such a blowout against the school that doesn't have scholarships for football. But Sac State, guys, there's a reason they're the number 2 school. I'm going to take Sac, and I don't think it's going to be particularly close. I would expect them to win by 3 touchdowns or more. Most of the comment section is thinking the same thing here. Nick Weber, Sac State 77-10. Colin Hughes 41-13. Tom Kendall 55-10. Cap Dan 58 saying Sac, but close. Taylor Cash saying Sac, but it's not close. I think we're all in agreement, guys. Sac State's got this one, which takes us to the actual, like, the good game here. I don't really care about the Montana NDSU game because Montana should get their faces punched in, hopefully. Sac State should beat Richmond. This is the game that I do care about. Weber State at Montana State. And if you ask the Bobcat fans, I want to see what Ron has to say here. A lot of Bobcat fans think Ron Lowney in the chat, Montana State guy who's been jumping in for the last couple weeks now. Montana State fans feel like they got jobbed by getting Weber State here, a rematch of a game that Weber State almost pulled off in the regular season. Montana State does have Isaiah Ifonse coming back. But what do we think, Martin? Weber State, Montana State.
I'll say Montana State by 7.
Yeah, I'm taking Montana State. I honestly don't think Isaiah Fonse coming back really matters that much. Montana has guys who have 30 or more carries. There are 7 dudes on Montana State averaging 6 yards per rush or more. Both Tommy Mellott and Sean Chambers, both are quarterbacks who can run. You honestly should understand Tommy Mellott as a quarterback who runs, and maybe at this point Sean Chambers is now a running back who can throw. Both those guys are playing at the same time. This is honestly for Montana State. I don't know if you guys are aware of the story of Brent Vegan being hired, but Vegan was about the 5th choice for the head coaching job because Montana State wanted to maintain continuity with the assistants from Choate's previous staff. Sometimes you luck into the right hires, man. Brent Vegan doing a kick-ass job right now. I think that Montana State is too tough offensively, and I think Weber State, they're coming apart offensively. They're not the team who can move the ball pretty well. They were in the first half of the season. I don't think Weber's going to be able – I don't think Weber's offense is clicking well enough right now to score the 38 points they put up against Montana State earlier in the year. Yes, MSU's weakness is on the defensive side of the ball, but no, I think Montana State's going to win this. I think this is probably a 2-score game.
I mean, if we had an Alex Boatman Memorial Player of the Game award, it would not have gone to the Weber State long snapper when they played Montana State previously. That's the only reason Montana State won that game, because the Weber State long snapper, for anybody that didn't pay attention to the game, snapped the ball over the punters, had 4 separate times that game. However, I think, Brian, I think you're right. I don't think that the Weber State offense is quite the same as they were in the first half of the season. First half of the season, Weber State should have absolutely won that game going away. I don't see it happening this time around. We got Ron Lowney in the chat saying Montana State by 28. He might be a little bit biased. Nick Weber also might be a tiny bit biased just in the spelling of his name. Picking Weber, same spelling, 45-41. Most everybody else seems like they're picking MSU in a close one. Shout out to Jason Mayer. Weber fixing their special team issues, winning 33-24. I got to give it to MSU here. But I like what Captain's thought is. Whoever wins the coin flip in overtime wins the game. If this was the NFL, I would completely agree. I got to take MSU, but I got to think this is a pretty close one. Maybe not like a final possession wins the game close, but close enough that Weber feels like they've got a shot at it mostly the whole game. All right, guys. Does that does it? Oh boy. Does that do it for football? Holy shit, it's late.
Yeah, it does it for football. 10-second basketball update. Idaho men did pick up a win last week at Pacific, 84-81. Downside, Taryn Frank forward. He had a pretty brutal ankle fracture. Don't know if it's a dislocation, but pretty ugly. Dude's not going to be back this season. So wishes to Taryn Frank on as quick and as thorough a recovery as is on the table. It was rough. Like the game took like a 30-minute break when Frank went down.
Carted him off. They put a towel over his head to cover up how bad it was for him, and it did not look good.
Yeah. So obviously, dude, best wishes to Taryn Frank. Hope he gets better as quick as he can. But we do not expect to see Frank back this season. And then just the one update, man. Isaac Jones, University of Idaho center. He was Big Sky Player of the Week, averaging 25 points a game on about 80% shooting. Jones is probably the best player in the Big Sky. He's an incredible get for Idaho. the team, obviously outside of Jones and coaching staff, who is not Jones, need to get a few other things together, because if Idaho's got the best player in the Big Sky, 2-5 with this schedule with only 1 D1 wins, not good enough. But fingers crossed that some of that matters. We'll talk more basketball later, but for real, guys, you should at least tune into a basketball game to see Isaac Jones. He's a very, very good post, great footwork, good touch, good athlete. He's the big bright spot on the team right now.
So I got a shout out to Tom Kendall here, one of our longest tenured listeners and patrons. We just dropped 17 viewers, and he's not kidding. We had 17 people drop off the second we started talking basketball. This is why I don't want to talk about this shit, because Zach Kloss is fucking poison.
Okay, we can transition out, man.
That was my transition. That's my comment on basketball. You have the goddamn best player in the conference, and you can't figure out how to win more than one game against a dog shit school. Like, not the Ken Palm rankings mean anything, but great job. You beat another bottom 100 Ken Palm school, and you got boat raced by some other ones. Great job. Claps all around.
Yeah, well, I hope there wasn't a misunderstanding about the direction I was talking about. I was honestly just trying to exit the topic, but yeah. Anyway, we'll talk basketball later. Next week, Dallas, is going to be the Tubs of the Club, like season wrap, closing the book on the 2022 season. Listeners, we'll probably send out a message to the patrons if there's any stuff in particular they want to hit on, any comments they want read out loud. We'll do that between now and then. Martin has his signing day special on December 21st, right?
Sure. I think that's signing day.
Yeah. Okay. Well, Martin, I'm about to talk about how you are like the godfather of signing day stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Then you don't know when signing
I'm
day
pretty sure it is.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure it's 21st.
Hey, Brian, it's amateur hour. Come on.
It is amateur hour. But anyway, we have a few more football episodes. Then we're going to take our Christmas, New Year's break for a couple weeks. So there will be there'll be a hard transition between football and basketball. We're obviously going to talk football news as much as we can into the new year. But until then, that's our schedule. Thanks to everyone who's joined the Patreon at patreon.com/tubstheclub. We've got a few people who've also mailed us individual donations, contributions. Thank you letters will be coming out, guys. We just all of us have a lot of stuff going on with the show too. The recording schedule during football season, we're recording 3 episodes a week. That Saturday through Tuesday run kind of kicked my ass. So we have some back stuff to mail out. That'll happen quick. But to everyone who supported us, thank you. And I'm good at calling this a show. Dallas, go Vandals.
Yeah, go Vandals, guys. Again, next week we're going to talk the guys that made all conference, the guys that are transferring out. We're going to recap the whole season and keep you away from veggies for at least another week. Go Mighty Vandals.
Go Vandals.
I-D-A-N-O! I know, go, go, go!
This is producer Brian doing a terrible job of even finding what we're going to play us out with. So we're just going to call it good. See you guys Tuesday.